Tonight, this grandmother spent nearly 2 years in prison, all based on the word of a Phoenix police officer with a history of dishonesty. Francis Salazar was finally released when the court learned that officer was a documented liar and that his history was kept secret. Salazar filed a federal lawsuit, and so far, Phoenix is losing.
It's why the city is appealing part of that case before there's even a trial, and they just argued their side in court. Here's ABC 15 Chief Investigator Dave Biscobee.
We'll proceed to hear argument in the next case on the calendar, which is Francis Salazar versus the City of Phoenix.
This is the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court, and this three-judge panel is hearing the city's appeal. Walking up to the mic, that's the city's hired attorney. She opened by criticizing a lower court judge by name.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for Judge Bolton, but I have to say in this ruling, she got this wrong.
She's talking about this ruling last year, one that created a huge legal risk for Phoenix PD. But before we get to that, we need to lay out the basics of Francis Salazar's case. She spent 22 months in prison for alleged drug possession. The conviction was based solely on the testimony of Officer Anthony Armour. No video. No pictures, no drug tests, no physical evidence, just his word.
You have an officer who got on the stand and told you, I confronted her and she said, I'll take responsibility for it. That's it. End of inquiry.
The judge eventually tossed Francis's conviction because Armour and Phoenix PD didn't tell the court he was a documented liar. A year before her trial, he falsely arrested a different woman and lied about it. Hiding something like that is unconstitutional. In the 1963 case, Brady v. Maryland, the Supreme Court ruled negative information or exculpatory evidence has to be disclosed to defendants.
So can you address this issue about...
And that takes us back to the city's appeal. The lower court judge ruled Officer Armour and Phoenix PD are not protected by qualified immunity when they didn't turn over that information before Francis's trial. Quote, "It would not be unreasonable for a jury to conclude that Salazar's injury and her 22-month confinement would have been avoided if PPD had implemented proper training and supervision regarding police officers' obligations under Brady. And that ruling means the case will go to trial unless they settle, or the Ninth Circuit overturns that decision."
She got this wrong. Officer Armour is entitled to qualified immunity.
Now here's a timeline at the heart of this case. In November 2015, Armour was accused of falsely arresting a different woman and lying about it. In April 2016, that internal investigation was completed, confirming he lied. Then, 4 months later, in August 2016, Francis had her trial and Armour testified. But the court was not informed of Armour's past lies.
And that's why I think
the city's attorney argued two main things. One, it wasn't Armour's responsibility to disclose his lies. That was Phoenix PD's. And two, the department didn't have to turn over the finalized internal investigation yet. Why? Because even after an internal investigation is finished, the city doesn't consider it completed until they finalize the discipline. And that can take months, even a year, or more. The panel of judges drilled into that argument.
If the facts are done, and the facts are that he lied, and he lied a lot, then I don't see why any of the rest of the process is terribly relevant. And it's pretty clear that someone who lies and then gets on the stand, that's Brady Giglio is to that person.
He disputes that he lied.
I know, but the factual findings were made, and you've now conceded they can't be reviewed.
I understand that, but that's one of the benefits to the municipality making the disclosures instead of leaving that to the officers. Police officers aren't lawyers. Police officers have different skill sets.
And with time running out, the city's attorney tried to tell the court the ripple effect this could have if they let Salazar's case go forward against Armour.
If a police officer could be held liable in this case, you would have
Counsel,
thousands of cases.
I'd let you go over. I think we have your argument, and I appreciate the arguments of both counsel this morning. And the case of Salazar versus Phoenix will be submitted for decision.
We should point out sometimes the feel and tone of these hearings don't always match the final result. As of right now, there's no set date for a decision, but it usually takes several weeks, sometimes more. I'm investigator Dave Biscobing, ABC 15, Arizona.
Armour is now retired, receiving a full pension. Dave has reported on Arizona's Brady List problems for the past 3 years, and you can find all of it, plus his exclusive statewide database at abc15.com/Brady List.
Good evening, everybody in my crime family. It's been a while. Been a few days anyway, huh? Oh, yeah. This is not the video that I've been working on. The videos, there's 4 of them, 3 of them that are due real shortly. Yeah, there's some that Karen is involved in, Karen and Pebbles. And I want to thank Joanne for that video right there. That's really, can you imagine? And then the guy gets full pension. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I think that kind of stuff is going to come up in this case. I truly, truly believe that. But I want to say some highs. And it looks like we got quite a few chatting. I don't know if I'll get to you all. Don't think so. Hi, Shell and Natural and Mama and Bonnie, Wendy, Rach, and there's a girl. Hey, Reverend, my girl. Katie, good to see you. Make sure you send me a link or send that video to, I don't know if you can send an email, maybe the Google Drive maybe or something, or the link, just send me the link to your video when you're done with it. Ron John, good to see you, buddy. And Deborah. And let's go, Lovetina, Sherlock. Just, there's a lot of people in here. Wendy, Mark and Betty, Joe, Valerie, Karma, Amy, Leah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of animals. Animals are angels, I should say, huh? Yeah, well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to Once Upon a Crime Time. So, yeah, what we're gonna do with this, like I said, this is not the videos that I've been working on, that I've been telling you about. But I woke up, well, I didn't wake up, I was up watching this morning, and I seen this one come up, and it said posted 48 seconds ago, so I got it right when it came out, and it's a pretty good video, so we're going to go over that. And I've showed this law firm's video once before, a different one, and they're pretty good. Their channel I've seen grow from like really small to now I see their last video had 11,000 views. So yeah, that's pretty good. And then we're going to go over another one. And you're all kind of wondering probably the title. That'll be on the last video. Hi, Full Tilt. And okay, so that's what we're going to do. And let's start out here. Here we go. And this is from, and I got the links down below in the description. So
I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers. The case gets more and more intriguing, I think, as it goes along, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even if you see our last video on 10 things about Kohberger's case that makes us scratch our heads, you look at the comments on that and the world is divided. That video has over 500 comments. Some of us praising us for our work, some of us saying, you don't know anything. And some of us, or some comments even putting out more.
Now that's funny. I find they're learning YouTube pretty quick.
Facts that may or may not be true. Where did people hear this? And let's find some more stuff about this Kohberger case that just don't add up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as much as I want to jump right in about the comment, there's another YouTuber who knows who she is, who starts out every single episode by saying, "Be kind, people. We're not perfect. Every now and then we, like all humans, make a mistake. So be kind. Don't personalize. You can call us out and we'll do everything we can to correct it. But we do like your comments. So please don't stop commenting. And by the time we get to the end here, we're actually going to read a couple of your comments. But right now, we need to take a look at some of the things that have happened that just make us say, wait a minute. And in my mind, one of the first things that makes me say, wait a minute, is that the FBI has gone back to 1122 King Road, purportedly to do an interior kind of a visual for the jury. They took a thing called LiDAR. And by the way, other people have pointed this out. And the reason I'm reaching over is to point to my phone. We all have a LiDAR on our advanced iPhones, but the FBI, what we're being told, the public spin is that they had to go in and take a graphic video of the interior of this premises so that they can show the jury. I don't buy it. Do you buy it?
It's weird to be going back to the house. I'm not a law enforcement professional, but you would think that they would have gotten everything and all the evidence they would have needed initially. So it's strange that they're going back there another time.
So how many people call bullshit on this? I call bullshit too. And I'm really wondering if they're not like watching YouTubers and they want to collect evidence, maybe not for the prosecution. Maybe they're looking, I don't know. What are they going there for? I don't get it. Something funny.
Well, I have at least 3 reasons, if not more, why I don't buy it. One of them is that I think that what happened is that the trial was supposed to go in early October of 2023. It didn't go. It got continued. So now they're saying, wait a minute, we got enough evidence to get past the probable cause affidavit, the PCA, as people call it. And we don't know what else they have. Sure, they have more. But my theory is that there's a lot more stuff that they forgot. Maybe they forgot to bang out a couple of pieces of drywall. Maybe they forgot to look under the floor. Maybe they forgot to look inside closets and underneath the floors of the closets. Maybe they forgot to go underneath the floors. That is call me a conspiracy theorist, but I'm guessing that the FBI had to go in there and do some more work, and they took in the LiDAR machines and they told the press that that's what they're doing. Remember, the FBI is the same agency that gave Whitey Bulger a heads up that he was about ready to be nabbed, and Whitey ran. And for 16 years, Whitey Bulger was on the run right under the FBI's noses out in Long Beach, California. Same FBI. Same FBI that whose Boston bureau chief, John Connolly, was sent to jail in Florida for murder. The FBI Boston bureau chief went to jail in Florida for murder. He was recently let out because he's very ill. Same FBI whose leader many years ago used to wiretap without the court's approval various people doing all kinds of horrible things, including President Kennedy having sex and other politicians, and they would hold that against them. So it is the same FBI. Do I trust that that's the reason they went into the house? No. And here's one reason I don't trust that was the reason they went into the house. Here's a newspaper article that goes back to December 4th of 2022. And remember that the crime occurred on November 13th of 2022. This is on the Crime Online site. And in December of 2022, they said law enforcement on Saturday returned to the home where 4 University of Idaho college students were murdered 3 weeks ago as authorities continue the hunt for the killer. Also Saturday, this piece goes on to say, before the investigators were spotted at the scene, the Moscow Police Department said it had received more than 2,600 email tips, upwards of 2,670 calls to the tip line, and nearly 1,100 digital media submissions in the investigation. Okay. All right. Good reporting. Stay with me. Authorities collected 113 pieces of physical evidence and took about 4,000 crime scene photos. Police said they had also taken multiple three-dimensional scans of the residence. So if they already had scans of the residence, why did they have to go in and do it again?
Right.
Nuh-uh. Don't buy it. I'm sorry.
Especially after so much time has passed too, where it's like, what could these 3D scans that they're taking now be different than the ones that were happening closer to the time that this crime was committed?
You know, and the other thing, and another thing, in the law, there.
And that's a good question. Why is the FBI working this case? And you have to think that there's different investigations going on here. I truly believe that. It's not a federal court. I just think that there's different investigations going on, and them going back in there, you know, I just don't believe that they were going in for the, especially when you have a guy crawling in an upstairs window. That really has nothing to do with them taking, No, they were after something different. And that's my opinion.
There's a theory called substantial similarity, and that means that if you have a photograph or a cartoon or a drawing or a likeness or a day in the life or a video or anything like that, it has to be substantially similar to the event that it is portraying. So what that means here is, you know, all that stuff has been stripped out. The police shortly, and a lot of people say way too shortly after the crimes, the police removed all the personal belongings. They stripped the inside. They took everything out. So the FBI now, you know, more than a year, about a year after the crime, after everything has been stripped out of there, you know, for gosh sake, they were going to tear the place down. They were going to tear the place down. So presumably there's nothing inside. So now they go inside with their fancy schmancy LiDAR, which is much more, you know, sophisticated than the LiDAR on my iPhone. And they go in there and they're going to take a video of the interior of 1122 Kings Road. That's not substantially similar to the way it looked at the time of the murders on November 13th. I mean, excuse me, there were college kids living in there. They had their furniture in there. They had their junk. What college dorm or residence have you ever gone in where everything was perfectly in place? So I don't buy it. I'm sorry. At the very least, the most naive thing I can say is that it makes me scratch my head. But okay, we'll play along with them and go on to the next thing. Reason number 4 that people can scratch their heads over this is that there was a frat fight. And what evidence do we have? Apparently, there were witnesses to the fact that Ethan Chapin and Xana did go to his Phi Epsilon fraternity the night before all of this happened, and there were words that were spoken. There's a guy by the name of David Loach who apparently had a thing for Xana. He kind of liked her, but Xana's already with Ethan, and there were some words spoken. I guess it didn't go quite as far as our graphic designer made it look like in the picture there, but there were words spoken. There was bad blood, and Xana, you know, politely grabbed her boyfriend Ethan and got him the heck out of there. Well, you know, all right, okay, maybe it's nothing. But the point is, we don't know. By analogy, it's not the same thing, but by analogy, when there was a death in another fraternity, ironically at Washington State University, right over the border, where accused mass killer Bryan Kohberger had been a PhD student. This fellow was found dead in January of 2023. The Washington State University Interfraternity Council, which oversees the fraternal groups at that school, declined to comment to the spokesman review. So, you know what? Fraternities like to cover stuff up and not talk. A spokesman, Phil Weiler, said, quote, "There's been a significant amount of
and busted flush. Yeah, and that could be. I mean, if that came from, if that really came out of real local said that, um, you know, I'm not. I don't second guess anything in this case. I mean, anything is possible. It's just one of those cases that's crazy. And yeah, it could be when Rory exposed those tunnels. You never know what if they heard cement grinding and blah blah blah. It could be looking to see if there's doors in there. You never know what they're doing. Not seeing that the tunnels had anything to do with anything because, we don't know. I mean, we don't even know if there's tunnels that go there. But, like I said, this case is pretty wild. Yeah. And talking about Rory, he will be back on the 14th. He's doing fine. And he will be back on the 14th. And he said he came out swinging when he first came out, and when he comes out this next time, he's going to be swinging again. So, yeah, he'll be back on the 14th.
Conjecture regarding the circumstances surrounding this incident and the actual cause of the student's passing, KREM TV reported. So the thing that's interesting about that, it's a totally different case, granted. It's across the border, granted, but it exemplifies the fact that on the one hand, the fraternity didn't want to talk. No, we're not going to say anything, but oh, by the way, there's a lot of speculation out there. So don't tell me that we're not going to tell you what happened in that dormitory the night that Ethan Chapin and the other guy had a fight. We're not going to tell you what happened, but there's a lot of conjecture.
Yeah, well, that is something that a lot of people in the comments had actually brought up, is like the different dramas between the different fraternities. And I'm not entirely sure if it was the same case that you mentioned there, but if not the same case, a similar one where it was supposed to be, oh, it was hazing, and then it's like, oh, it was a deadly combination of alcohol and medication, and then it's just like, oh, it was a self-unaliving, Andrew's favorite term.
Yeah. No, I think that all those things you just said were part of. I mean, fraternities have these issues as time goes on, but yeah, all of those.
What they don't know is what we know, right? I mean, Karen and I showed you things on that Linda Lake, and I'm flabbergasted that people haven't checked into this, and we know that Ethan got in a fight that night. There's no doubt about it. I got some different opinions on that now. I think he did end up at that house, still alive, but there was definitely a fight, and I thought we proved that, but what can I say?
Things you just said were part of the issue in the Washington State University case that we just took a look at. Reason number 3 that we scratch our heads. There has been a lot said and filed in court. In fact, the prosecution and the defense went back and forth over IgG. What is IgG? Well, it's investigative genealogy genes, and it's a science. And it is the way that, for example, one can take the
I'm sorry. Science? No, it isn't a science. It's a pseudoscience, maybe. It is not. IgG, to me, is not a science. And wait until the next video when I show you what kind of science it really is. It's disgusting. Trust me.
Touch DNA off of a knife sheath and then feed it into a system. And then they find that it might be through the system, people that have, it creates a model. There's a memo out there that goes on for 40 pages. That's not the point of this podcast. Some other podcasters have done a really good and thorough job at that. And in fact, there was a court hearing on this where even the judge was saying, Judge John Judge was saying, I'm getting to the point where I understand this, thank you for briefing it. But none of that matters. None of that matters, because why are they even fighting over the IGG? There are court rulings, and it's a basic constitutional right that the prosecution must turn over all exculpatory evidence. And if they're not turning over the exculpatory evidence, why aren't they turning it over? I mean, is it just the old, well, we don't want to confuse the issues and we don't want to give them probable cause? But in my view, they should never even have been arguing this. The prosecution, the state of Idaho said, oh, well, none of this was even a part of the probable cause affidavit, and none of it's even relevant, and none of it even, has anything to do with anything. Well, then turn it over. And you know why you should turn it over? The reason why you should turn it over is that the American Bar Association has standards for the processing of DNA evidence. And it goes on and on and on. But I'm going to read you two pertinent parts of the criminal justice standards on DNA evidence from the American Bar Association. And it says, Standard 1.2C, the policies and procedures employed for testing DNA evidence should be available for public inspection. E, a person charged with or convicted of a crime should be provided reasonable access to relevant DNA evidence, and if it has been tested, to the test results and their interpretation. So, I mean, if the American Bar Association has spent its time, coming up with these regulations, and Mr. Kohberger is E, a person charged with a crime, why was this even an argument? I didn't get it. It took a lot of time, and we can dig way deep into what IGG is and the process of going from the touch DNA all the way to Mr. Kohberger from the neighbor's trash in Pennsylvania. I think it's a waste of time. I think the pages and pages and pages of documents were just a waste of time. Am I getting too worked up over this?
I know the whole touch DNA thing kind of freaks me out. I keep referring back to the comments, but you guys really leave me thinking, and I see these things and I'm like, oh my goodness, because it might have been one or two people mentioned, I don't know this, everybody, shout out to the investigators in the comments, but people are saying that with touch DNA it can be transferred, and that I think that he was a tutor or something, so people were saying oh, well, how many papers has he touched? And the whole knife sheet thing, having his DNA in the first place, and why, if this person's supposed to be an expert, that there's a knife sheet left over, the whole thing just makes my skin crawl. It just sounds so creepy to think that there could be stuff going on with the DNA, that things could be planted, that things can be changed, that touch DNA can move, can be transferred. The whole thing freaks me out. Ugh.
Sometime co-host, guest, Doug Cope, the longtime Boston journalist and journalism professor, made a really pertinent comment the last time we talked about this. And he said, you can go to a yard sale and buy pretty much anything,
Yeah, I don't believe. I don't think I think they should have went with the speedy trial, because I think the defense was more prepared than the prosecution. That's just my opinion. It might not be opinions of lawyers or whatever, but I just think there was more in the defense's favor. And that puts a lot of pressure on the prosecution. And I think they're kind of stuck, especially with this this DNA. Things don't look good. That's going to be one of my shows is coming up. I don't want to get too much into it here, but Yeah, there's some stuff I'll be coming up, taking on coming up here.
Now, if I don't know, a stupid example, but what if I wanted to take my phone and sell it at a yard sale? Because this is a iPhone 11, and now it's old. It's the 15s are the big thing now. So I take it to a yard sale and sell it, and somebody commits a bad act, and that they buy my phone at a yard sale, and the phone is next to them, and they've just done something really bad. The FBI is going to be knocking on my door. Oh, Mr. Myers, your DNA was found right next to this dead body. And I'm like, okay. So
Yeah,
anyway.
like actually though, it's horrifying.
I know. So now we get to reason number 2 that we still scratch our heads. And that is, in this case, a preliminary hearing had been scheduled in this case. And I'm going to refer to my notes because I want to be accurate. There was a preliminary hearing scheduled in this case. And the purpose of a preliminary hearing in Idaho and many states is to determine if there is probable cause to hold the guy over. They had probable cause to arrest, but is there enough probable cause to hold him?
They got really fucked over on this deal. In my opinion, I think grand juries should be wiped out of the government, wiped out of the courts. I just don't believe in them. The preliminary hearing is where that should come out. Everything should come out. The defense should be there. The prosecution should be there. And they both fight it out and they find out if it should go to trial. What the fuck is a secret shit behind closed fucking doors? What the fuck? That's like bullshit. And only only one team gets to be there to present their case. Talk about bullshit. Like, who invented that crap? Anyway.
Him over and deny him of his right to liberty. So the preliminary hearing had been scheduled June 26th. Bada bing, bada boom, May 16th, Mr. Kohberger is indicted. And a lot of people, not just me, scratched their head and said, why not do it out in open? Why not do it in the public preliminary hearing? Why go and revert back to this ancient, archaic system of a indictment by a grand jury? And as was correctly pointed out by one of the TV stations out there, KTVB, grand jury proceedings, including witness testimony, are private and secret. Prosecutors present the information to the grand jury. Possible defendants are not even entitled to be there, and there's no opportunity for anyone to cross-examine witnesses on the defendant's behalf, as there would have been in a preliminary hearing. So these things are done in private,
Nah, and that's one of the points is that the preliminary hearing, they didn't have enough to do it because the state wasn't handing over the documents, but that would have put the pressure on the state because they would have had to hand those documents over before trial. And if he had a speedy trial, that would have put the pressure on that they would have had to give that information out. And if they didn't, they could have this case thrown out of court. And I still think they should have went with the speedy trial. That's one of the reasons why right there.
secret, just like everything else in the Kohberger case. And I'm not the only person that said, with a preliminary hearing that had been scheduled where the defense would have been able to cross-examine the witnesses, why did the prosecution go behind everybody's back and do it secretly and privately behind closed doors in a private indictment?
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a question for you beyond all of this.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little hungry looking at it. Why did we include a sandwich?
Okay, this is law school, constitutional law and evidentiary law 101. First year law school, you learn that based on all the things that I've just said, where there's no right to cross-examine witnesses, where the the accused's attorneys aren't even allowed to be there. You could indict a ham sandwich. Any law school student will tell you that that's the thing that our professors all tell us, because the ham sandwich didn't even do anything. But if you don't have somebody cross-examining your witnesses, there's a lot of leeway there, and I'll just leave it at that. And
Yeah.
so, number one, the number one reason why we scratch our heads is, the trial had been scheduled in early October of 2023, and Mr. Kohlberger, by and through his attorney, Ann Taylor, waived that. And the question is, did he shoot himself in the foot by waiving his right to a speedy trial? I mean, he could have had the trial. There's a lot of people out there that feel that he has a valid defense. This allowed, as we pointed out back on slide number 1, that the FBI could go back into the house and start looking around and creating this video, whether it's admissible or not. I don't think that's why they went in the house. As I said before, I think that they went in there to take another look. But by delaying the trial, does that give the prosecution another bite at the apple to start going over the investigation and all of the evidence all over again? So I don't know. Again, we don't know any of this stuff, and people are happy to point down in the evidence in the comment section that you don't have evidence to support that. No, but we're human beings with minds, and we're able to use reason and logic and take a look at what we do know, and just say, the right to a speedy trial is in the Constitution. It's in the constitutions of all the states too, and it's there for a reason. So I guess we'll leave it there as a question. And did Mr. Kohlberger and his attorney shoot themselves in the foot by waiving their right to a speedy trial?
Now, I guess my question to you with that, and maybe what some people are potentially wondering, is, like you mentioned, that not doing the right to a speedy trial gives the prosecution time to go look over everything. Do you think that there would be any benefits to waiving that right for them? Is it because you think that they have a good case and that why would they need that extra time?
Well, the thinking was that they too needed more time. They too needed their own experts for this whole IgG genetic research thing. Requires experts. I mean, you can't just, pull somebody off the street to start talking about the intricacies of looking at DNA and figuring out, through family trees, whether there were errors in the process. So that's just one area in which the defense will very likely need experts. I mean, they're looking for the death penalty. So when the state is looking for the death penalty, if you're defending, your radar, your LiDAR is going way up. Not that you don't have due diligence with every client and every case every day, but when your client is facing the death penalty, I mean, you've really got to make sure that you are leaving no stone unturned. And I believe that's why most people think that Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, and her two colleagues said, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and ask for more time, because we too need more time to get experts to, really take a hard look at what the prosecution is saying. It's a complicated case. And so, they need to take a deeper look.
Very scary. Like you mentioned, like having the death penalty on the line. Like, it does make sense to want to go over things a little bit more. It's the crazy concept just in general for me to even begin to think about.
Yeah, I thought I've actually seen some interesting comments in our comment section. One person that just looked at our previous 10 reasons to scratch your head had said, did they ever get any imprints of tire tracks? And I thought that was interesting, because I hadn't thought of that before. I mean, every car is unique. Tires are unique. Even if you and I buy exactly the same tire on the same day, you drive where you drive, I drive the other way that I drive. I might run over a nail, you might run over a piece of glass, whatever. That puts a distinct imprint in those tires. So even though you and I bought the same tire on the same day, you went where you went, I went where I went, and tire tracks from your car and tire tracks from my car, even a week after we buy those two tires, are going to be different. So I just thought it was an interesting thing. We get a lot of interesting comments, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It with the comment section and anything you see on YouTube or on YouTube, including podcasters and just anybody on the internet in general. Obviously, anybody's able to say anything that they want to say, but it's really interesting to see like how many details like you guys bring up or know about or question. And just the discussion going around, it looked like a lot of people too were a little bit confused and shocked that Jack S wasn't, investigated a little bit more. And, you know,
Bam! You think so? I think he should be reinvestigated. And I thought someone was going to start a petition on that, or there is a petition out there, actually, right? And I know some of you guys signed it. I know I signed it. I mean, the whole thing needs to be. When are they going to give up? I mean, my God, it's just unbelievable. There's just too many facts out there that are not being proven on their point. And then when you have, they're trying to say that Brian did that. And I showed you what he did. He pulled in there. When he did that turnaround, he's seen what was happening. He's seen there was people in the back of that truck, and he's seen what was happening. He turned around. That's what he did. This case.
there's a lot of confusing things. I mean, I agree it's a little weird that this person has gone off to Africa after this case and like all these different aspects. We're going to trust the justice system to do the right thing and hope that everything, plays out the way that it should. But it is also interesting to see some of the speculation going on in the comments. And even I look at things and you hear things and you watch different podcasts and you learn different things, and it really changes the way.
Yeah, I did. Huda, I watched, was on jail. I did watch it. And that would be a good that's going to have to be part of the defense. I mean, the night before there was over 100 people there. I mean, can you just picture this? Picture what the defense is going to do to this case. They're going to get some of these kids up on the stand. Were you at this party? Yes. How many people were there? Well, like over 100. And yet, how much DNA was in the house? 3 unidentified. Really? I mean, it's going to cause so much doubt. All this stuff is going to cause so much doubt. And they don't have shit. They don't, unless they have a video of that man going to, into the house and out of the house. They don't have enough to convict. It will either be a hung jury or he'll be acquitted. That's the way I look at it in a way. It's just crazy. Anyway, we should probably move on to the next video here, because the next one's kind of a long one. And Karen, thank you so much for being here today too, because I know you haven't been feeling good and stuff. You're awesome, girl. And yeah, we're going to get on to the next video. There we go. Okay, where are you? And I'm going to put that down a little bit here. Okay, now here we go again, guys. This guy has attacked us in this community. He's I'm going to be nice, okay? He's just very confident, let's say. But this video really, it only has 1.7 thousand. And one of the new videos of his, He's like, unsub me. Everybody unsub me. He kind of makes me laugh. To me, he's not a threat at all. He's just, and the bummer part is he's very intelligent. He puts out good content. So I think you all know who I'm talking about. And that's Get a Clue. But this video that he put out a month ago has only got 1,000.7 views, and this needs to get out there. And so I just feel like I should run it. So that's what I'm going to do. And it will show you what this, how they get the IgG right from the lab. You'll see it. You'll see it all.
Below. And there's a reason I chose this song, because it's covered in this video that we're going to look at. This video we're going to look at with Mark Furball for Fox News, Bloodline, related to the Idaho 4 case and DNA, is a great addendum to Garbage In, Garbage Out. So we definitely need to review this, folks, to see what they get right and what they get wrong. There's some good material in here, don't get me wrong. It's so
he is talking about, this is he's actually, so he's sharing a video, so we're watching him share a video, and the video he's sharing is with Mark Furball, I think he calls him.
I think it's well done, and he shows some things that he puts visualization to some of these things that we're talking about, which is good. So visualization is always good, in my opinion. If we can add clarity, we should add clarity. Polish the diamond, right? And this just adds clarity. So I'm going to use this documentary as fair use, because I'm going to be starting and stopping it and commenting upon it. I like to do this, as you know, because once again, it adds clarity, right? We can clarify things. So class is in session, and let us get started. And remember, all we are is dust in the wind. Folks, we have to. There's got to be commentary on this, okay? So credit to Titanium Built for inspiring me to look into this video and to comment upon it. So like I said, give credit where credit is due. I don't necessarily subscribe to Titanium Built's views, but on occasion I'll watch her, see if she has anything of interest to add, anything of value to add, but I do not respect her stance and opinion on this case. So here we go.
Four college students murdered in their beds.
It's just like a nightmare that you just never, ever wake up from. There's not a second throughout the day that I don't think about Kaylee and what happened to her. It's sickening.
Investigators are still desperately searching for a motive and a suspect.
Then suddenly, a break in the case.
The DNA taken in a cheek swab from suspect Brian Kohberger is a, quote, statistical match to the knife sheath that was found at the crime, according to new court documents.
He thought he was organized, but he was completely disorganized.
DNA in the... How about Furball there? Fur baby saying he thought he was organized, but he was completely disorganized. Fur baby, you're a son of a bitch. You are absolutely a son of a bitch. Fur baby is one of those that I spoke about in my last video, Garbage In, Garbage Out. These so-called experts in LE that are contributing to this injustice. Okay, and it's comments like that rankle me, and they should rankle you.
A tool called investigative genetic genealogy played a key role.
Look at how they're, in this video, look at how they're portraying the defendant. It's complete character assassination.
in pointing them toward Koberger.
I think on most cases that we've seen, probably over 80, 90% of them are solvable through genetic genealogy.
It circumvents.
So I'm going to tell you right now, there's a few things we're going to touch on while reviewing this video. And what that individual right there said is one of them. And it should be chilling to every single one of us here what he just said. Okay, he's going to expand upon that, but it should be chilling, just that statement alone. So listen to what he just said. We're going to roll it back a little bit. Let's roll it back. Listen to what that guy
Motive
says
and a
again.
suspect.
Then suddenly, a break in the case.
The DNA taken in a cheek swab from suspect Brian Koberger is a, quote, statistical match to the knife sheath that was found at the crime, according to new court documents.
He thought he was organized, but he was completely disorganized.
DNA and the tool called investigative genetic genealogy played a key role in pointing them toward Koberger.
I think on most cases that we've seen, probably over 80, 90% of them are solvable through genetic genealogy.
80, 90% are solvable through genetic genealogy. Wrap your head around that, folks. And the way they want to proceed with this is, as they're proceeding in this case, they don't want to show their work. They want to just submit this to the IGG process and not show their work at all and take it to trial and say, you just have to take our word for it. We plucked this individual off the street and they're in jail now, and we want them, we want them to receive a lethal injection or get in front of a firing squad just because we said so. Trust our process. You know it's solid. It's not flawed in any way. Just trust us. 80, 90% of cases, folks. They want to replace all investigation with this. This is what they want to become the investigation. That is chilling and unnerving. And folks, this is the wave of the future. The only way out of this for you, if you're one of these individuals plucked, is for you to be wealthy.
It circumvents hours, days, weeks of police work to hone in on a potential suspect early on.
Nobody knows the serial killers and rape.
So get this. See what they're saying? Heretofore, IGG process has been used as a last resort. After you have exhausted all other investigatory techniques and the case has gone cold, you deploy IGG. Now they're saying they want it to be up front. Do it right away. Why wait as a last resort? Screw these other inferior investigation techniques. Use IGG immediately. It's much more efficient. Look how efficient it was in this case, right? And they used it immediately.
Yes, MK. I did post a picture in my community page with Dylan holding that K-bar. And someone said, no, that picture was of her with a lighter and it was altered. I grabbed that picture off a video and she was, and I didn't quite get the whole picture, and it just shows the knife blade. And man, I should have checked to make sure I grabbed the whole pic. But it shows her holding the handle, and it's a K-bar. And those kids, and in college, the college kids, there was a bunch of them, like over at Sigma High, that had those knives. I mean, there's videos of them with these knives. There's pictures of them with these knives. And how can the I just don't understand how they got to Brian and why they think so strongly. I think they jumped the gun too fast and they're scared to pull back now and look like idiots. They need an out is what they need. And they might be able to do that somehow. They need an out. And I think a reinvestigation is needed. there's just too much. There's too much.
It gets better.
Family.
I assure you.
Statistically, you only need to have a very small sample of the overall population to have a more probable than not chance of finding somebody. The killers are generally not in the database, so we find their cousins.
The Kohberger case is a perfect example. It gives you that confirmation that that is indeed the person whose DNA was at the crime scene.
Human beings are 99.9% identical in their genetic makeup. That means only a paltry 0.1% of our DNA is responsible for the traits that make us unique. It's these small differences that shape our identity and allow us to leave our mark on the world, literally. We transfer DNA with every touch, every shedding.
You hear that? Check that out. I'm going to back that up a little bit.
And allow us to leave our mark on the world, literally.
Do it right away. Why wait as a last resort? Screw these other inferior investigation techniques. Use IgG immediately. It's much more efficient. Look how efficient it was in this case, right? And they used it immediately.
Rapists and their
It gets better.
family.
I assure you.
Statistically, you only need to have a very small sample of the overall population to have a more probable than not chance of finding somebody. The killers are generally not in the database, so we find their cousins.
The Kohberger case is a perfect example. It gives you that confirmation that that is indeed the person whose DNA was at the crime scene.
Human beings are 99.9% identical in their genetic makeup.
We are 99.9% identical. 99.9% identical.
That means only a paltry 0.1% of our DNA is responsible for the traits that make us unique. It's these small differences that shape our identity and allow us to leave our mark on the world, literally. We transfer DNA with every touch, every shedding hair, every drop of blood. It serves as a roadmap of who we are, where we've been, and who we are connected to. Historically, when DNA is found at a crime scene, it's analyzed and compared to offender profiles in federal databases to help identify the perpetrator. But what happens when there's no match? That's where genetic genealogy comes in. In this special, we'll break down the ins and outs of this groundbreaking technique and how it led authorities to the alleged killer responsible for the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonsalves, Maddie Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle.
Thank goodness he got all those names right, didn't he? Kudos. Kudos to Mark Furminator for getting the names right. Even Judge doesn't get the names right.
We're here today to talk about genetic genealogy.
Boy, he's getting old, isn't he? Wow, look how old he's getting. I don't know how old he is now. He's got to be in his 70s, right? Maybe approaching 80. Starting to get slack-jawed. Look at that neck. He's getting the gizzard going.
Specifically the Bryan Kohberger case, but then again, it applies to all cases. My guests, Steve Kramer and Steve Bush, have created genetic genealogy software.
Oh, of course they have, right? Of course they have. And of course, this is why they want all future cases to ultimately be solved using this process, right? Because they've developed cutting edge, state of the art software to solve these cases. And it's proprietary, folks. Remember this.
And again, what is it going to come down to? Fucking money. Money, money, money. This is some scary, the rest of this video is going to show you some scary, scary fucking shit. I'm telling you, this is some scary stuff.
This software, they're a private company, so it's proprietary. So you're not allowed to like look in the software to determine whether it's legit or not. You just got to take the word for it. But hey, they're honest guys. They're honest guys. They're good capitalists just trying to make a profit off of tragedy, right?
That's going to revolutionize law enforcement.
I've often commented, Mark, that genetic genealogy is one of the most objective investigative techniques out there. And oftentimes detectives would come to us and say, hey, let me tell you.
So notice the bait and switch here. Objective, one of the most objective, okay? But it is, but it isn't. And we've seen this with that case that I highlighted about with CeCe Moore. And it was the Angie Dodge case. And CeCe Moore is renowned, as we all know. She's a renowned genealogist. And she's helped solve a number of cold cases. But she even got it wrong in that case. In her first pass, she got it wrong. And she got it wrong because the IgG process involves assumptions. And assumptions are not objective. They're not. Your bias is involved in assumptions. And if you're making an assumption, you're using your judgment, and anybody's judgment is biased. Okay, so maybe it's more objective than other techniques, but it's not absolute objective. Okay, and mistakes can be made in this process. It's a tool, and it's a tool that can be flawed if it's not utilized properly. And it can be flawed because you make inappropriate assumptions. This is not a process without flaws. It's a tool. And like any tool, it has flaws. And like any tool, it can be misused.
Tell you about my case, and it's like, look, I don't really need to even know about the case. I just need the DNA. Let us do the.
Look at that. I don't even need to know about the case. I just need the DNA. Now, I would say that's appropriate for what they're doing. You actually shouldn't know about the case. So when they submit a sample to these companies for to develop an S&P profile and then to run the IgG process on it after they got that profile, I believe that it should be blind.
And that makes me wonder, was Athron blind? What, were they blind to this case? Or did they know who they were looking for? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, I don't know, man.
That the company that is contracted out to do this should know nothing about the case whatsoever. Because if we're talking about assumptions here, then that is going to creep into their assumptions. So they should be going about this completely blind, in my opinion.
Genetic genealogy on the DNA, and we'll tell you who we think that DNA belongs to.
Now, because it's so sensitive, you can get just a few skin cells and create a profile. And once you have that profile, you can start building a family tree. Let's take it from there.
So law enforcement will start with what's traditionally known as an STR profile. This is the common.
This is good. He's indicating the process we discussed in the previous video, right? The first thing they do always is they try to develop an STR profile from the sample using STR analysis, okay? And this STR analysis has been around a long time, several decades, right? So it's been around a long time and it's gotten better over the years. It's kind of reached its peak now. You can do about as much with it as you possibly can, I think, at this point. So, but what they were having problems with was low copy number samples. So, and they don't mention that in this video at all. You'll see they don't mention this at all because they want you to think that, oh, STR analysis can do all this, but it can't. It cannot derive, as Bruce Boudall has told us, it cannot derive an accurate, reliable profile from low copy number samples. Okay, they don't mention that in this video. Of course, they're not going to mention that in this video. But you start with that STR analysis. And there's two different types of profiles. Remember, they can do a quick test on it. Doesn't use up much of the sample, if any at all. This quick test will tell you whether it's a male or a female, the DNA profile. That's a quick test, all right? Then there's another testing that they do on it altogether to develop a full and accurate profile from that sample that they can upload into CODIS to see if they get a match, all right? And that's a different process altogether. It's much more in-depth than just the male or female process.
Profile that occupies the FBI's CODIS database, the Combined DNA Index System. If the suspect is a known offender, they're going to take that STR, they're going to compare it to CODIS, and they'll immediately get the name of the suspect. Now, where genetic genealogy starts is as soon as that CODIS profile comes back and says, we don't have a hit. As law enforcement, we can now get a separate profile. We like to call it a genealogy profile. This is the same profile that you put into Ancestry.com or 23andMe. And these profiles, once you upload them to a database like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, those databases aren't going to give you back your suspect's name, but they're going to give you back people that your suspect is related to.
So you get a removed cousin from 6 generations ago. Their DNA has a little bit of DNA that is also connected to the suspect in some remote fashion, and that's where you start. So it can go up or down, right? And you could go back 1700.
You're hitting on the key point. You build family trees up, but then you have to build down. And probably the most common question that we get from people is like, well, I'm not in any DNA database, you'll never find me. And that's incorrect, because you have a second or third or a fourth or a fifth cousin, probably that you do not know, that did put their DNA into one of these databases.
So they raise a good point here, that even though you might not want to be in these databases, you effectively are in these databases, because Lord knows you're going to have some relatives that have done this. So I know I have relatives that have done it. I have a brother that did this. You know, he blew out the family tree and all that. I wasn't part of it, and I didn't want to be part of it. I don't care, but he he did it. So, I'm caught up in it too. There's whether I want to be or not. And I'm sure the FBI is listening right now and they know this, so maybe they'll, pin a crime on me pretty soon, right? So if you guys hear that I've been plucked off the street and I'm the next defendant here in another, but yet it applied to another crime, it's just the FBI getting back at me. They can't like me at this point.
So you'll have hundreds, if not thousands, of cousins related to you in these databases already. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Just how accurate are the family connections? And how do police use the information to pinpoint a suspect?
Take the Idaho case, Brian Kohberger. DNA was found at the crime scene that apparently matches him.
On the worst piece of evidence.
Right, on the worst piece of evidence, but on.
I'm glad he said apparently, right? At least he said apparently. That apparently matches him. Right? He did. That was good of him to say just apparently. Old Furball here is not saying that. Furball so firmly believes it is the defendant's DNA.
One tiny spot on the button on the knife sheath, and no other evidence, no video of him, no admissions that we know of.
I think they were pretty crafty to be able to get DNA off that.
That's a good word, right? They were pretty crafty. Oh, Mark, listen, fur baby. They were absolutely crafty, and in more ways than you would ever imagine, Mark. They were really crafty, weren't they?
Sheath button. It probably wasn't blood, or if it was covered with the victim's blood.
Furball, we know it wasn't blood, okay? The defense cleverly, through one of their motions, indicated it was trace touch DNA, and they know that through discovery. So this is what I hate about these guilters out here, and he's a guilter, folks, all right? They still, there's some people out there still that are contending that we don't know whether it's trace touch DNA and a low copy number sample, therefore, or whether it was biological blood DNA. Yes, we do. The defense let it slip. There's a clever way around the gag order. The defense let it be known it's trace touch DNA, therefore it's low copy number DNA. So good try, Furball.
Blood, not Kohberger's.
Amazing police work, right? We call it touch DNA. It doesn't last a long time.
touch DNA, and it doesn't last a long time. So think about this, folks. We call it touch DNA, and it doesn't last very long. All right? It doesn't last very long.
And it degrades easily?
Degrades easily, especially when it comes in contact with metal ions. As Chloe Penny has pointed out to me long ago, several months ago, and I started looking into it, and you can look into it too. We don't have to show it right here, but you can look into it. Look up how metal ions degrade DNA. Do a Google search, and you will find multiple hits. Scientific, peer-reviewed, studied papers about how various metal ions have an effect on DNA samples or DNA extracted from metal materials. It degrades the DNA, resulting in all these unreliable effects that we were talking about with low copy number DNA. So my question is, this sample was taken from a brass button. These are brass buttons on the K-bar knives. And brass in particular especially degrades DNA. So then my question is, I already think that they didn't develop a reliable, accurate DNA profile from the sample using STR analysis because it was low copy number. And as we know, Bruce Boudall told us you can't develop a reliable, accurate profile from a low copy number sample. But then, well, as we'll find out, S&P can use low copy number samples to develop profiles because it's a different process. It's a more robust process. It's a different process. So they can use a much more degraded, more diminutive sample and still get a profile. And Othram, on top of that, apparently has expertise in developing profiles from samples that are, you know, contaminated by various materials. For example, one of them that in the JLR interview that Middleman, the CEO and founder of Othram, mentioned that they accomplished was to be able to extract a profile and DNA from a sample that was encased in formaldehyde. And so I was like screaming at the TV when JLR had this interview on, ask him about metal ions. Do they have experience with DNA samples being degraded and contaminated via metal ions? And of course, JLR would never do that or didn't do it. But anyway, back to the video.
It can be washed away easily, and usually there's very little in terms of quantity.
When you see a department that gets that contact DNA, do you also see that they probably were?
Now, pay attention to what he said there. He said, usually it's very little in quantity, right? So it's like I've been saying, I've been arguing with people in the comment section. Most of you don't know this, but I've been arguing with a number of people in the comment section about low copy number samples, and that skin cells, trace touch DNA, are inherently low copy number samples. And he just validated this individual. Okay, so he validated that. I don't know what these people don't get about this. He just validated it.
We're very attention oriented throughout the investigation. Would you agree that there's got to be more at the crime scene on the Kohberger case than just that little piece of contact DNA?
I think every crime's different, and it depends what type of preparation he did. We've had cases where people have planned the homicides and they've shaved.
Here we go, folks. So this is what I said. This is where they want the defendant to be everything they want him to be, and it doesn't matter if this becomes a contradiction for them, right? So he's good enough to not leave. He's good enough to be smart enough to not leave certain things at the crime scene, right? And not get certain things, traipse certain things from the crime scene into his car and all that. He's incredibly intelligent and clever in this regard, but he leaves a knife sheath there. And not only does he leave a knife sheath there, but he leaves a knife sheath with his DNA in the button clasp because he didn't clean it well enough. See what I'm saying? It's a contradiction. You can't have it both ways, folks. You can't have it both ways. He can't be both a mastermind and a dumbass, all right? And it just happens to be whichever he is at the moment is convenient for you.
Oh, You know, sometimes his personality is, like I said, he makes me laugh. But yeah, he can be a little overbearing sometimes. But he brings up a lot of good points, and I'm telling you, there's some pretty good booms coming up here that are pretty good
in explaining away a contradiction. And then you end up contradicting yourself trying to do that. Their jock straps are wrapped around their ankles when they do this.
They've all their hair off their body. They've washed themselves. They've washed their weapons. Yet we still can find DNA at those crime scenes.
Although DNA can be found seemingly anywhere, it's important to remember that the leads generated by genetic genealogy are just one part of the puzzle.
Genetic genealogy is an investigative lead. It points you to a potential suspect. When you get the STR from that potential suspect and the STR from the suspect matches the STR from the crime scene, that's what's relevant. That's what's probable cause in order for that person to be considered a suspect.
There you go, bingo. So this individual said earlier, I believe it was earlier, because I don't think it's later, that he said that IgG should be used to confirm a suspect.
There's one boom right there. There's one boom right there, because in this case, they're trying to tell us the opposite. We didn't use it. We didn't use it. We didn't use it. You know, we didn't use it to confirm. You know what I'm saying?
The STR from the suspect matches the STR from the crime scene. That's what's relevant. That's what's probable cause in order for that person to be considered a suspect.
There you go, bingo. So this individual said earlier, I believe it was earlier, because I don't think it's later, that he said that IgG should be used to confirm a suspect. And then now he's saying, oh, it's used as a lead. So it is currently supposed to be used as a lead. In other words, you don't have any idea here, and this is a last resort, and you need some kind of tip or lead. So you send it to IgG to give you someone to point to. Okay. But earlier he was saying it can be used and should be used for confirmation purposes. So in other words, to confirm that you have your suspicions about somebody and you want to go to the IgG process to say, hey, I want this to confirm my suspicions about this individual. So which is it, folks? Which do you want? You can't have it both ways. But they want it the first way. They want it as a confirmation.
The genealogy that got you there is not.
Genetic
And remember what he said. And I said this in the other video too. So you go to the IgG process if it's used properly, right? So you go to the IgG process, you've exhausted all investigatory techniques you could. The case has gone cold. You tap into IgG, and they go through the process of building out the family trees. They locate they locate a match, what they believe to be the match, and they submit it to law enforcement. Law enforcement is supposed to take it back and then investigate upon that match and determine if this individual fits using other investigative techniques to see if it fits. Okay. And then once you do that, you find a way to get their DNA. And, that's usually involves them surveilling the individual and waiting until they toss out a soda bottle or, a cigarette or whatever the case may be. They get their DNA. From that, they develop their STR profile from that, and then they compare it to the STR profile from the sample from the crime scene. And if it's a match, they have probable cause then to go to a magistrate and get an arrest from the judge, get the affidavit to arrest. So that's how it's supposed to be done. In this case, I argue, in my last video, in this case, I've argued that because it was a low copy number sample, that any profile that they would have developed from that sample, because of what Bruce Boudall tells us, has to be unreliable and inaccurate. So I don't see that there's any way they could have made any kind of match from the swab when they arrested the defendant in this case and comparing it to that initial STR profile. This is where I believe the foul play has occurred.
Genealogy has a great effect on the use of police resources, which are very scarce. So genealogy has the advantage of providing these investigative leads. Let's go back to the Kohberger case. Apparently, the police thought somebody driving a white Hyundai Elantra was a suspect vehicle, given the proximity to the crime scene. All those people are suspects, and there's thousands of them. Thousands.
No, there's not. That's a lie, folks. There are not thousands of them, okay? There are not thousands of them. The FBI expert initially identified this as a 2011 to 2013. You cannot make that identification unless you have sufficient enough detail to be able to determine distinctive characteristics of a 2011-2013 versus a 2014 to 2016, or even a 2017 to 2020, I would say. He had to have seen those distinguishing characteristics to make that specific of an identification. So he saw those distinctive characteristics. So it's a 2011 to 2013. And he said that initially, and that was his report back to Brett Payne and the task force. So if you were to look for 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantras in that area, it's not going to be thousands. It's going to be, you're lucky if you reach 100. If you're lucky if you reach 100, I would say more like less than 50, maybe 30, 35. So that is incorrect. It was not thousands.
Thousands of people in that two-state area drove a white Hyundai Elantra, and the police have to look at all of them.
Notice how I said white Hyundai Elantra. Once again, they're obscuring. It wasn't just white Hyundai Elantra. It was white Hyundai Elantra 2011 to 2013. There's a difference.
What's the advantage of genetic genealogy? It says, hey, we found somebody that likely drove a white Elantra and they live near the crime scene. Now, as an investigator, that's your big lead. And that's the way it works. And you confirm that lead by taking the DNA from that person.
Look at, you confirm it. So he's indicating what they did in this case. He knows that's what they did in this case. They didn't use the IgG process in this case as a lead, as they've been saying. So they're lying, and he knows they're lying because he knows what they did here. They used the IgG process to confirm what they already suspected, and they were surveilling this defendant, and I submit they interviewed this defendant prior to him leaving for Pennsylvania. I would say early December. Twice, once by phone and once with Brett Payne in person. And then Harsh is saying, they conducted this interview with him after they arrested him. No, they didn't, Harsh. He was lawyered up immediately. You think he would have just sat there and met with law enforcement? No way. He's a criminal justice major. He knows the score. So he's saying it right here. It was used as confirmation.
Yes, that's a big boom, and I agree. LA, that's what I like is his passion, and because I understand it, and that's what makes his points good. And he's also a very good researcher. I just I wish he would stick to that, but his passion kind of contributes to his demeanor towards others, which gets him in trouble.
Which is not the way this is supposed to be used currently. It's not the guidance. It is not the guidance. The Department of Justice, this is in violation of the guidance. Judge should throw it out for this reason. This is a great enough reason to throw it out. I mean, throw it out entirely. They can't say anything about DNA. And think about that. Do they even have a case? If this gets thrown out, they don't even have a case at this point if it gets thrown out. Why even take it to trial at that point?
Getting the STR and CODIS and comparing it to the crime scene DNA.
In the affidavit of arrest, they went through the process of their investigation and how they went from crime scene to Bryan Kohberger. They never once used the word genetic genealogy, but they definitely used it because Kohberger wasn't in the database, and that was already known fairly early.
They had reason to believe that Bryan Kohberger was the suspect in the case.
See, he's saying it. They have reason to believe he was a suspect in the case. He's saying it. They used the IGG process inappropriately as confirmation to get the arrest.
And they figured out where he was. He had left the state of Washington and went to Pennsylvania. They surveilled him in Pennsylvania, and they pulled trash.
Think about it, folks. Can you imagine any magistrate agreeing that there was probable cause based off of this cell phone ping analysis and this video analysis of the vehicle? Can you imagine this? What magistrate would agree to that?
From the residence that he was at, which was apparently his parents' residence. That trash, they got DNA off of. And when they got an STR and compared it with the STR from the crime scene.
It was the father's.
It was the father's. And the chance that DNA could be anyone else other than the killer's father had these incredible odds. And that's what they used in the affidavit. So they didn't have Brian's, but they knew we had the father of the killer. And so they used that as their probable cause to arrest Brian Kohberger. And then subsequently, after he was arrested, they took his DNA and got an STR, and it matched the crime scene.
Top-notch detective work. But is it legal? Can police collect the suspect's DNA without their consent?
They can. We know they can do it, and they do it all the time. All right. But the better question in this case is it legal what they really did here?
So once he takes the trash out and he puts it in a trash can, he's given up rights under the Fourth Amendment to that property because he's discarded it. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So this is how they got the Golden State Killer, too.
Officials in California announcing today they arrested the man they believe is the Golden State Killer. For more than 4 decades, the identity of the person who murdered 12 people and raped dozens more in the 70s and 80s has been a mystery.
Steve, you actually were knee-deep in that case.
Remember, these guys want to blow this out so this becomes the investigation. Forget about all the other crap you had to do before as investigators. Just throw it out the window. Now, let's just do IGG. And wait till he gives you a number of the number of cases out there that this should apply to. Can you imagine how many innocent people are going to be locked up? There's already enough of them locked up, but imagine how many now are going to be locked up as a result of this. It's coming, folks. You can't stop what's coming. It's not waiting on you. That's vanity, folks. That's from No Country for Old Men. Great quote, by the way. Great quote. But it's coming. There's no stopping it. People are going to be locked up left and right, and they're going to be innocent.
You turned probably how many years of investigation and man hours into 63 days?
Yeah, it was 43 years. And
43 years.
And well over 200,000 man hours in investigation efforts.
But ultimately, it was genetic genealogy that cracked the case.
Steve Kramer had a harebrained idea. He said, hey, this guy has left his DNA all up and down the state of California. Why don't we use his DNA to try to figure out who he is? And he said, maybe we can do it just like, the folks at Ancestry.com do it with one of these genealogy profiles. And so he came up with the idea to try that at the FBI. A lot of people thought.
So remember, folks, with this, they're comparing apples and oranges. So remember, this case was a low copy number case of trace touch DNA, okay? The samples that they were using from that case, the Golden State Killer, were biological samples. There's a big difference in quality, all right? They were using biological samples, big difference in quality. But yet they're conflating the two for these purposes, and they are not one and the same.
He was nuts for trying it, but we all know now that it did work, and they were able to identify the Golden State Killer.
It is fitting that today is National DNA Day. We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento.
Now that seemed like a huge win for the case, which it was.
Right.
But the bigger win was, wow, we have this process now that we can use on all these other cases. 5 cases became 10.
Bingo, right? Bingo. So we could use these all on all these other cases, and now we can extend it to touch trace DNA. Who cares if it's low copy number? We can extend it to trace touch DNA. Do you see how wrong all of this can go? This case is an example of how wrong it can go. And this case is really the test case, if you think about it, because this is the first really active case that they've done this on. And this is the precedent. This is the precedent-setting case right here.
10 cases became 20 cases, became 50 cases. And what we learned was without software, this is not going to be a scalable process. The process takes way too long, and it's just never going to really change the game. If you go.
Did you hear that? The process takes way too long. So this is a long process. Yeah, there was an incredibly fast turnaround in this case, and it was by the FBI. Does the FBI have this software? Are they using this software? Remember, the FBI didn't allow Othram to do the IgG process. They said, no, we'll do the IgG process. Do they have this software that this individual has? That these two individuals have developed?
Go to CODIS and you say, well, how many unidentified DNA profiles are in CODIS right now of people who have committed murder, who have committed rape? It's over 1 million people. We don't know who they are. And that number continues to go up year over year. The paltry, a couple hundred solved.
There he goes. He gave the number. Over 1 million people, folks. So I submit within a decade, this is how fast this is moving. Within a decade, those over 1 million crimes that he's talking about are going to be solved using this process. And there's going to be over 1 million people thrown in jail. And a not insubstantial percentage of those people are not going to be guilty of that crime.
That genetic genealogy has to date is not moving the needle.
So if you own prison stocks, or if you don't own prison stocks, you should start owning prison stocks right now. Because if you thought the American prison system was burgeoning and bursting at the seams now, just imagine how it's going to be after they roll this shit out.
And everybody, this whole country is watching this case. And this is going to be a precedent for cases to come. They cannot let this go through the way it's going through. And this judge better do the right thing for this country.
Software is necessary in order to change the game.
How do you come up with software that basically looks at a pyramid and keys in on certain DNA and starts making matches?
Genetic genealogy is based on inferring relationships between people from records. You could pull up the 1850 census and you could see, Steve Jones and Jennifer Jones live at the same address at the same time, and they have a person who's 25 years younger than them named John Jones. And we would infer that John Jones is probably the son.
So once again, words mean everything, right? He's saying infer, but what he's saying is you're making assumptions, okay? We would assume, not infer, you would assume. You're assuming. So it's an assumption, okay? So it is an assumption.
Of the mom and the dad that live there. Now, we may be right, we may be wrong, we don't know. We're just making an assumption. But if you make those assumptions over and over and over and over again, you can start to see whether your assumptions are correct or not. This is how what we jokingly call long division genealogy.
Okay, and remember, CeCe Moore in the Angie Dodd case went through this process just as he's describing it, and she inferred, i.e. made assumptions, and her first go around, she made the wrong assumptions. And had she submitted that lead from those wrong assumptions, that initial wrong lead to LE and LE happened to be crooked, like I believe they are in this case, then there would be an innocent man in jail.
Technology works.
Okay, so if you go down the wrong path, that was a neighbor that was living with him because his parents were killed in an auto accident, you're only going to get to a dead end. You're not going to arrest or focus on a person that didn't have the possibility of committing the crime.
Let's say you built a completely wrong family tree and you went down the wrong path, as you said, and you got to a suspect that looked good. When you pull that suspect's DNA and compare it to the crime scene DNA, it's not going to match, right? It's going to come back and say, that's not the guy. That's not the guy who touched the knife sheath, right? That's not the guy who left his, evidence inside of the rape victim.
We're not going to arrest the wrong person because we still take their DNA compared to the crime scene. If it matches, then you have your guy. In fact, the DOJ guidelines and the FBI teaches it this way, is that you are not to use genealogy solely for probable cause. So nobody.
Woo! Did you hear that? You're not to use genealogy solely for probable cause. Yet earlier he's saying, oh, use it for confirmation and probable cause. These people talk out of both sides of the mouth, don't they? And it's exactly what the FBI did in this case. They used it for probable cause. Oh my God, this can't be any more blatant. These idiots, do they not see what idiots they look like? When the context of what they're saying is this case, the Idaho 4 case, and what was done?
Nobody should be arrested.
I mean, to me, these are booms. Almost everything that's being said are like booms. These guys right here, these are the ones that invented this software. I mean, everything is going to get corrupt, and it is corrupt. Unfucking believable.
Based on genealogy. So when people worry about the police arresting the wrong person, it's not going to happen because of genealogy.
Well, that's true, I guess, in a sense, right? I guess in a sense, it's they utilized IGG here to justify this. It wasn't that IGG gave them the wrong person. I believe they just painted by numbers with the IGG process in this. They already had they already had the answer. But so I guess in that sense he's correct, but not for the reasons he thinks he's correct.
Genealogy simply tells you whose DNA was at the crime scene.
But it's not always a straightforward process. Finding a match takes time and resources, something many police departments don't have enough.
Finding a match takes time and resources. So you're that time and resources. How much time? It didn't seem like it took much time in this case, did it?
Enough of these days.
I like to break the genetic genealogy process up into two parts. The first part is going from the DNA at the crime scene to the profile. This is where they take an actual raw sample of something, saliva or blood, they put it into a machine, and that machine produces a SNP profile.
To see the machines in action, I headed to San Diego to visit Verigen Labs. It's here they build the genetic genealogy technology used by public forensic labs and law enforcement to analyze DNA and catch crime.
This is great visualization here, folks, because I've had commentary, individuals asking me, well, how quickly can they turn around one of these profiles? And we find out how they can do it here, all right? So it's actually not, especially for SNP, I don't know how it works for STR, but I'm going to imagine it's the same way. It's actually not a long process to develop the profile. They have machinery to do it, all right? Now, who speaks to the accuracy of this machinery? I don't know. And that's a great question, right? I mean, how many people can really audit and verify and vet these machines to make sure that they are accurate in what they're doing? I don't know what procedures are in place to ensure that. And so that's a potential weak point for me, or Achilles heel for.
Okay, what he's saying there is like, you know, when we had our grocery stores, there was a guy that came around, and actually he was a classmate's dad, and he was worked for the government, and he would come and he would take he would check our scales to make sure our scales in the produce department and the meat department were right, and make any adjustments if they needed adjustments. Who's, and there's a government, if you look through, I mean, they're watching everything, right? FDA, you got, all this, but who's watching these guys? Who's watching these guys? This is going to get real scary right here. Watch what goes on in this lab and stuff. Watch this shit.
For this, all of this, how do we know how accurate this machine is? Is there calibration at all involved? How often is it being calibrated? There's many questions surrounding this, right?
Criminals. So in the Koberger case, they have contact, that's trace, I suspect, on a knife sheath that was left at the scene. They processed that DNA. It came up with a profile that did not get a hit in CODIS. So then they used genetic genealogy to find a relative. And they found a relative one generation away, his father. Then they go to Pennsylvania and they wait until he takes out the trash, and they get that DNA, they process it, they put the two pieces together, they get an arrest warrant. Is that basically what we're talking about, case after case after case in genetic genealogy?
That is what we're talking about with every case now. One of the things that Verogen does is we are also stewards of the GEDmatch database. So today, when public labs have a casework sample coming in from a putative suspect, they do STR typing. So they're looking at 25 discrete locations on the genome, and they're looking at it in a very analog way. They're looking at the length, not actually reading the DNA.
That's great. That's great information, folks. Class is in session, right? Class is in session.
What we do is build equipment that allows you to digitally read the DNA. So effectively, we are digitizing forensic evidence.
Let's say law enforcement has a sample. How small can that be where you can still get a profile?
So historically, you needed a lot more DNA, but technology has come a very long way in the last 20 years. At this point in time, you could generate a DNA profile from as little as 5 cells.
Wow. Okay. So as little as 5 cells. So remember Blum? Blum said less than 20 skin cells, maybe much less. And remember, they claimed that they did STR analysis on the sample and developed a profile from that. So they had to be using up that sample. I mean, I don't know how much left could have been left for Othram, but it could have been much more than 5 cells. So she's saying as little as 5 cells. I find that interesting. How about the quality of the sample? So she's speaking the quantity. That's a very small quantity. The quantity of it. What about the quality of it? Right? Remember metal ion contamination. So this is still all in play as to whether Othram did indeed develop an S&P profile from that sample or not. She's saying 5.
So how many cells would you need to be able to visibly see it on the head of a pin?
300 cells.
So 300 cells on the head of a pin, and you can work with 5.
We can work with 5.
That puts it into perspective.
Exactly.
If DNA is found at a crime scene, it's collected and sent to a forensic lab where it's loaded into this machine. This is it?
This is the box.
That's it.
That is it.
So Swathi, this right here has the slide of the DNA material that you have placed on this slide.
Correct.
So now show me what you do to make this machine start working to process the DNA.
Gladly, Mark. What forensic lab scientists tend to do is they prepare the DNA so it can be read by the machine. First, we want to hit sequence.
So notice when she puts the slide into the machine, I would think like any process involved. Have you ever seen the process that they use to develop microchips for computers? It's incredible. I mean, it's incredible how sanitary the environments are. Yeah, They're dressed up in like, you would think there was a plague the way they're dressed up in these labs. They can't have any dust whatsoever. It's entirely sanitary. And yet this lab's not like this for the DNA analysis. As a matter of fact, if you look when she's putting the slide in, there's all kinds of dust and debris in the crack.
This is supposed to be a fucking lab, people. Watch this. Watch this shit. Watch the dirt and the just watch this. It's unbelievable.
Cracks near where she puts the slide in on the machine. I'm like, alrighty then. Okay then. What about all the touch DNA and trace DNA in those cracks on the machine?
What that means is it's telling the machine we want to digitally look at every single
Make sure you look for it
location.
to the left of where she puts it in.
What my instrument is telling me to do
So you
is
look
to
at it there
put
on the
that
left.
microscope slide
Look at it there on the left.
into the reader.
See it? See it right above her glove. Look at all that dirt and debris. Now, granted, maybe it's self-contained within that slide. I don't know. But still, nonetheless, right? Shouldn't this all be sanitized just in case? And it's not. Look at right above her. Look at all that dirt and debris right above her glove. Parallel to the bones in her hand. Look at all that dirt and debris.
So I do that, clamp it down, close the door. We put all of the other chemistries that are required to run this sequencer, and you hit next.
Okay.
And the machine does what it needs to do. 28 hours later, the
Kinds of dust and debris in the cracks near where she puts the slide in on the machine.
This
I'm
is
like,
fucking
alrighty
unbelievable,
then.
people. This
Okay
is
then.
fucking
What about all the touch
unacceptable.
DNA?
This
the
is
trace
supposed to
DNA
be a fucking lab.
in those cracks on the machine?
what that means is it's telling the machine we want to digitally look at every single
Make sure you look for
location.
it to the left of
We're
where she
typing.
puts it in.
What my instrument is telling me
Look
to
at all
do
this
is
See, look at
shit.
it there on the
put that
left.
microscope slide
What the
Look at it there on the left.
This is a lab.
reader.
See it?
It's supposed to be
See it
like
right above her glove.
totally sanitized.
Look at all that dirt and debris.
And this is the machine that's
Now,
gonna
granted, maybe
put
it's
you away?
self-contained within that slide. I don't know. But still, nonetheless, right? Shouldn't this all be sanitized just in case? And it's not. Look at right above her. Look at all that dirt and debris right above her glove.
wait until she
Parallel to the bones in her
and here,
hand.
look at this. You can see it from here.
Look at all that dirt and debris.
Look at that. It's out in here.
So I do that, clamp it down, close the door. We put all of the other
unbelievable.
chemistries that are
This is a
required
lab.
to run this sequencer, and
Oh
you
my
hit
God.
next.
Okay.
And the machine does what it needs to do. 28 hours later, the sequence
28 hours. So there we go. In case you were wondering, 28 hours to develop a S&P profile, if one can be developed from the sample.
Out of what? Dirt?
28 hours.
data is ready to be analyzed.
How much?
A machine like this costs about $140,000 to $150,000.
And who verifies the accuracy of these machines? That's what I would like to know. There's got to be very few people, right? Very few people. Or is it proprietary and nobody can really verify and vet this machine to determine its accuracy? I'm just saying, this is scary stuff. This is scary stuff.
It definitely reduces the overall investments that we have to make as taxpayers on public safety, because not only does it help us solve faster, it
It's a great recruitment tool to, to bolster immigration to America from India, right? You just take her and, show this and say, hey, you can come to America too, and come and help lock up innocent people using this new technology. How about it? We've got millions of people that we need to lock up. Come on down. Come on over and let's lock some innocent people up.
also helps us exonerate those who have been wrongly accused of crime. So truly what it
Well, right now, it's used to exonerate people wrongly accused of crime because it's not being done as much as they want it to be done. Once this unfolds like I'm talking about, folks, those are going to be few cases and far between, the exonerations. It's going to be used mostly to lock up a bunch of people, and a significant not insubstantial percentage of those people are going to be innocent. I don't know what that percentage would be, but whatever percentage it is, it's too high of a percentage. But who knows? It could be anywhere from 15 to 20%.
What it does is,
and there's some weirdos out there, folks, that would tell you that's an acceptable number if 80% are guilty and they go to jail as a result. They're more than willing to make those 20%, 15%, 20% sacrifices for that. Just so long as it's not them.
use the power of DNA as a tool for justice.
Where we were talking about the homicide solution rate, and it's at about 55% nationwide, which isn't very impressive. Do you believe that if law enforcement had 50 of these machines in major cities in the United States, how would that change? And how fast?
That is one of the reasons we are so passionate about democratizing access to all the 260 public labs in the country. If you think about the number of profiles today that don't deliver.
You see where they're going with this, folks? Furball is talking about getting to 100% solution solve rate, or maybe 80, 90% solve rate. Do you see this? Using this machinery. This is the way to solve crimes. It's the way of the future. This is it. This is it. And get this, that when it goes to trial, you're not allowed to question it. You can't question the machine. You just have to accept your fate. The machine said so. It's like a lottery, isn't it? It's going to be like a lottery. You'd be plucked off the street and you're like, that's not me. What are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter. The machine has chosen you. You won the lottery. What's your prize? Well, life imprisonment or in front of a firing squad. That's your prize.
Deliver a hit or a match every year. We're looking at 90,000 profiles. A vast majority of those could be candidates for genetic genealogy. And given the number of profiles that are in GEDmatch and FTDNA, there have been multiple studies that have shown that having 1% of a representative population in these databases could lead to 90 to 95% identification rates.
It's going to change everything.
Wow. So much for, the opting out and all that, right? In the databases, and it doesn't matter. She's saying once you reach 1% of people who opt in, you've got it all already. So it renders all those concerns moot at that point. This is scary shit, folks. This is some scary shit.
We believe it is.
Genetic genealogy.
Look how happy they are all about it, too. They are giddy. They don't see any downside to this whatsoever. They're giddy.
Gene may be the crime-solving tool of the future, but still, challenges remain.
Labs are starting to produce these SNP profiles faster than they've been produced in the past. What's bogging departments down is the ability to go from a profile to a known identity, because that's what we really need.
It takes a long time to build family trees.
And they have the answer. Proprietary software. You're not allowed to see it. Just take our word for it. It's great stuff, folks. I'm telling you. It's great stuff. And then you look behind it, and it's a dartboard, and they're just throwing darts.
Tedious. We run into dead ends. And cops don't want to be sitting in front of their computer. They want to be out in the field knocking on doors. They want the easy solution, and that's what Indago is. Push the button, here's your suspect.
I can imagine if I met you somewhere and I was still working, I would have a list of
Indago. They're loving that. Remember what I said about public relations and public relation firms? Well, this is great advertising, isn't it, folks? Indago. Watch out for that name, folks, because it's coming for you.
the cases going back to 1957, and I'm going to be lining them up.
Mark, what you just said is exactly what we teach at these conferences. Is we say, look, go back to your department on Monday and say, I want a list on my desk tomorrow of all of the cases that we have that have adequate DNA. Pretty much any amount of suspects.
Eichmann has nothing on these folks. Nothing. These folks are going to make Eichmann look like a choir boy.
Suspect DNA is adequate now with the technology to get that SNP profile. We're getting down to the just a couple of cell level to be able to get these DNA profiles.
Really, there's no crime scene where you can't get some.
Oh, but it's science. You cannot argue with science. It's science after all. And science is the best religion of all, isn't it?
Evidence from the suspect, whether it's a piece of sweat or saliva or a hair.
There's science that says we can get DNA from your breath. One of the things that we use a lot is rootless hairs. We've solved cases.
Now they can get DNA from your breath.
And there's my title. Don't breathe. They're coming for you. Right there.
You know, we were in the commentary to my last video that this is an addendum to garbage in, garbage out. Someone brought up about how, you know, your DNA is everywhere. This person was talking about how she has thick, full hair and she would comb her hair in the car and then throw her hair out the window. And, you know, we're shedding skin cells all over the place and then it gets caught up in the wind. And this is where dust in the wind comes from, folks. All right. So our DNA, our trace touch DNA is dust in the wind. It just flakes off of us and it gets up into the stratosphere and it floats around and it settles down everywhere across the globe. There could be parts of you, you know, in the Arctic Circle. There could be parts of you in Antarctica, a part of you in Antarctica. And so to this person, I said, yeah, I said, it's freaky when you think about it this way, isn't it? I mean, all of us could have Hitler on us, right? He shed enough DNA. All of us could have Hitler on us in some way, shape, or form. His electrons could be floating around out there and settled upon us, all of us, in some way, shape, or form. And then I said, of course, don't tell the Odinists because they would have an orgasm if they knew that.
Where we have just a small pubic hair that was found on a victim, and we're able to get a full profile and identify the person. So the technology is only getting better and better at it.
It's hard to fathom to take something smaller than the head of a pin, and you could.
The technology is going to get so good, folks, that eventually it's going to evolve, probably quickly too, not even eventually, into pre-crime. They're going to know that you committed a crime before you committed the crime.
Could get genetic code from that's 3.2 billion base pairs long. That's 6.4 billion letters. That's 2,000 King James Bibles stacked up next to each other of letters unique to you and only you, and differentiating you from any other human who ever has walked on this planet and ever will walk on this planet.
But to ultimately put convicts behind bars, law enforcement needs the public's help.
Well, when you think about it, Mark, it's no different than the interviews that you did when you were.
Oh, and they'll be more than willing to help. All one has to do is go to the Idaho 4 subreddit and the Moscow Murders subreddit, and you'll see how much help. They're lining up to help. Believe me, they are lining up to help. Rathdrum is ready to help.
A police detective, you knocked on people's doors and you said, hey, you have a piece of evidence that's relevant to my case, and I'd like to ask you about it. It might be your eyewitness testimony. It might be your Ring doorbell footage. It might be a piece of trash that was left in your front yard. In this case, it's your DNA.
It's important to be honest and tell the public what we're doing. And I think that's kind of the give and take with forensic genetic genealogy. If the cops abuse it, don't.
Oh, how ironic is that? It's good to be honest and tell the public what you're doing. Yeah. But don't show your processes, right? Because they're proprietary. You know, don't bring transparency to it because it's proprietary. All right. It's covered by trademarks and copyrights and you're not allowed to see it, but you're going to be honest with the public, right? Shut up. Shut up, you jokers. Look at their eyes. What do you see? Dollar signs.
Use it the right way, then people will not cooperate.
Believe me, they are very, very willing to cooperate with you when you lay those facts out for them and say, this is how I worked to get to your front door. Believe me, if I could solve this case without knocking on your door, I would.
Believe me, they're more than willing to cooperate with you when you said, hey, we want to really stick it to that neighbor of yours down the street and they can't stand the son of a bitch. Oh yeah, they will, believe me, they'll cooperate.
Would have already solved it, but we're here because we need your help.
Still, the question remains, should citizens be concerned about police having their DNA?
There's a big concern about privacy.
Yes, you should be concerned. You should be really concerned. And this case proves it.
And people, consider their DNA more private than anything, in some ways more private than their Facebook accounts, which, frankly, show more of their family, members and intimate details of their life than, the DNA ever could. The government needs to ensure and be transparent with the public that, hey, we need this technique and we need to balance the privacy interest.
Be transparent with the public. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. They're being real transparent in this case, aren't they? This is what I'm saying. They're so disingenuous, right? The big argument in this case is that the state is not being transparent with the public or with the defense or anybody, and yet they're saying this with a straight face right now. They're using the word transparent in the context of this case.
In this case, and what bothers me the most, I think, is how blatant everything is, from the murders to the murder suspects to the prosecution to this DNA crap. That's what gets to me, is the blatantness of it. It's scary.
How disingenuous can you get?
It would be nice to have a giant give away your DNA barbecue and people just line up, get a free hot dog and a beer and give me your DNA. It's a joke, but sometimes you can trap something like that. I think the public, if they understood, it would be really supportive.
Besides putting people in jail.
This is incredible, is it not, folks? Seriously. These guys are like him talking about the barbecue where you give up your DNA. This is like, I mean, there's so many of them, but the Holocaust movies, like where they show the individuals that the Jews that they would let live a little longer. The Germans would let some of the Jews live a little longer. They wouldn't kill them immediately if they would help them usher them into the crematoriums. I mean, into the gas chambers. Like maybe by playing music or trying to assuage them that it's just a shower. Don't worry about it. That's what these folks are like. Just a barbecue to give up your DNA before you take a gas shower.
The survivors, the victims of these crimes, particularly when they've gone years, decades, knowing that person that's done this terrible thing to them.
Yeah, here's the difference though. What he just said there, because he's talking about cold cases, decades old. This is a fresh case. And I believe this is the very first that they've used IgG in a fresh case. And there's a big fucking difference between a cold case and a fresh case. And that's what they're trying to do is use this IgG on fresh cases throughout the country. And you even have, what's her name? I can't even think of her name right now. Morris. She even said that it should not be used in the court of law. And police departments and prosecutions and DA offices, they're pushing to get this throughout the country. This is a huge case. This is a huge fucking case. Everybody is watching this case.
It's still out there. It's amazing that genetic genealogy can bring closure to that.
So once again, they're exploiting the tragedy. They're exploiting the victims' loved ones once again to carry forth their their fascist totalitarian regime. So,
All right. What'd y'all think of that? I'm telling you, this is a big, huge case, and it's not just about Bryan Kohberger. It's about how this country is going to be at the end of this case. If the judge does right, this case should be thrown the hell out, because they used IGG. They are full of bullshit. They're full of shit. They used the IGG to get the probable cause, and they can't tell me any fucking different. I mean, how blatant can they try? It is awful. Yes, CR. It is awful. And it's very scary. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. There was a lot of good points in a couple of those videos. Yes, Ron John, I will be leaving this up. And, I want to thank all of you. You guys are my crime family. You're all awesome. Please like and subscribe and become part of the crime family. And, it's awesome chat all the time. My mods are the best in the business. And, so, I love all of you. And, and until next time, rock and roll.
Me in the morning on a bright and sunny day. Yes, you left me in the morning on a bright and sunny day. You didn't wait for me, mama. You didn't even say goodbye. I tried so hard to be there by your side. I tried so hard there by your side, but you didn't wait for me, mama. You didn't even say goodbye. by your side. Yes, I tried so hard to be there by your side. But you didn't wait for me, mama. You didn't even say goodbye. Sunny day. You left me in the morning on a bright and sunny day. You didn't wait for me, mama. You didn't even say goodbye. I cried so hard as I stood there by your grave. I cried like a child as I stood there by your grave. Lost my last chance to say goodbye on that bright and sunny day.
I don't know when, yeah, I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time is rolling on. And I hear their lonesome whistle way down the same song. Well, when I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always get good, boy, don't ever play with guns. Yeah, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And when I hear that lonesome whistle, I hang my head and cry. And I bet there's rich folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking whiskey and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. And I hear that lonesome whistle, and that's what tortures me. Torture me, child. Yeah, I bet there is folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're tortures me.